Today's episode of Beyond the Mask is presented by the insurance specialists at Bright Think Wealth Strategies. Find the disability insurance coverage that fits you best right now. Email Robert Smith at rsmithjr@financialguide.com. The show is also made possible by the team at CRNA Financial Planning. Get a free consultation today to be guided through the complexities of investing and financial planning. Just visit crnafinancialplanning.com. And don't forget, listening to our podcast can earn you Class B credits. For more information on how you can submit them, check out the CE Credit tab on our website, beyondthemaskpodcast.com. Welcome to Beyond the Mask, innovation and opportunities for CRNAs and advanced practice nurses, with certified financial planner Jeremy Stanley and CRNA Sharon Pierce. Jeremy Stanley has worked with CRNAs for more than 23 years, and Sharon Pierce is a former president of the AANA and the NCANA. Join us as we leave the operating room and learn the latest in the CRNA and advanced practice nurse industries. Beyond the Mask starts in 10, 9, 8,
7. Sharon, how are you?
I'm good. How are you today, Jeremy?
I'm doing well. Can't complain, you know. Life is good. We got plenty of rain.
Lots of rain.
You know, I mean, I look out at the forecast and it's 60% of the days are rain. So I figure God says we need rain.
I guess so.
Right? We might have to build an ark soon. But
we just might.
Well, Sharon, we have another, I think, wonderful speaker and great topic today. And why don't you introduce our speaker today? We'll switch
Absolutely.
it up a minute.
Well, we've had him on our podcast
We have,
before.
yeah.
And so welcome to Ernest Grant, fellow North Carolinian and past president of the American Nurses Association, but not by law. So Grant, Ernest, why don't you go ahead and I called you Grant for a minute. My son-in-law's name is Grant. So Ernest, why don't you take it away and tell us a little bit more about yourself in case people didn't listen to your other podcast with us, and then tell us what your topic is for today.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me. First, I need to apologize to your audience because I am speaking from a hotel room in Washington, D.C., and you may have heard the siren go through. So there may be other disruptions as we know, D.C. tends to be quite a busy place when it comes to emergency medical services. But so my term ended as the 36th president of the American Nurses Association on December 31st of last year, midnight to be exact. And I couldn't wait to...
Were you awake at midnight?
No, I was not, actually.
I could see you there popping the bottle, you know.
Yeah.
Hey.
No, I did promise the incoming president, who lives in Oregon, that I was going to call her at midnight our time, which would have been 9 o'clock her time, just to say, hey, you get it 3 hours earlier. But alas, I was asleep myself. So we just had that silent transition. But I'm finding it took a little over a month for me to wake up every day and not feel that, I should be in a meeting or planning for an interview or something like that. So, but things are going very, very well, and we'll continue in the capacity of representing ANA on the Commission to Address Racism in Nursing, which we talked about before coming on to the podcast, and also ANA's reconciliation work. So that's the reason I'm here in D.C. right at the moment. But hopefully today we're going to talk about the nursing workforce issues and some of the things that we've been doing and working about. So ready when you are.
Yeah, and then maybe we'll talk a little about what's next for Ernest too here. So
yeah.
Yes. So all right. So Ernest, why is this shortage maybe different than some of the others that have occurred over the years?
That's a really great question. And this shortage, it's actually, I wouldn't call it a shortage. I would call it a crisis. And actually, in September 7th of 2021, I actually wrote a letter to Secretary of Health and Human Services, Becerra, asking him to declare it a crisis as opposed to a shortage because we've never seen anything like this before. I've been a nurse, going into my fourth decade now, and have experienced a lot of shortages. But this one is one that not only the pandemic, I think, exacerbated the shortage, but it was predicted about 20 years ago. And its failure on the part of those of us in nursing education, those of us in administration, those of us in, as far as with payers and hospital administrators, and at the federal government level, when you think of, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, failure of us to adhere to the warnings that was put out about 20 years ago, when it was projected that you're going to have people such as myself, the baby boomers preparing to retire, people who are living longer, so therefore there's an increased need for nursing services, and the failure to properly plan for that, and the shift of healthcare from the acute care setting out into the community or long-term care and places like that. And of course, as hospitals have begun to do that, they're still having their major services still at the central location, but as they offer essentially branch services or services out in the community, there's still that increased need for healthcare, there as well. So an increased need for nurses at that particular point. And we already were short about, depending on who you read, anywhere from 0.5 to 1 million nurses already. And we only graduate about, between 125 to 250,000 nurses a year. So you can't backfill a huge deficit that was already there. And on top of that, once COVID struck and having an even more greater amount of retirement than we had anticipated. So sorry for the very long answer, but that's only just scratching the surface as far as, addressing that. But yes, this crisis is something that is really going to be with us for, I fear, quite some time.
So why should consumers be concerned about that? And we'll all be consumers of nursing care eventually, whether you want to be or not.
That's a really great question, Sharon. And part of it is because the consumer, when they go to their healthcare provider, when they go to their hospitals, when they go to the nursing homes, perhaps to visit, their loved ones in long-term care, or even, school nurses and et cetera, the services that they are expecting, it's not going to be there. Or if it is going to be there, it's going to be not as robust, if you will, as it once was. Because nurses are extremely stressed and stretched. And so therefore being asked to do more with less means that as a result of that, they're having to stop and either take on 1, 2, 3 more patients or so, which means that I can't spend that time with you at the bedside that I would like to, because I've got 3 other additional patients or 4 other additional patients I need to take care of. And we're already seeing that and hearing the consumer, issue those complaints. But it's unfortunate. It's not until they actually need the services that they begin to realize that, the extent of the shortage and how it is impacting them. What we really need is for the consumer to be savvy enough to talk to, hospital administrators, to talk to their leaders at the local and state level, to say, this is not, what we signed up for in a way, or this is not what we expect. It's unacceptable, and they need to do something about it. So yes, in the end, it is the consumer who's going to suffer, but it's also nursing personnel that's suffering as well because of how overworked that they are.
So, Ernest, I'm gonna ask you a couple things that you probably weren't prepared for before this, but I know you can roll with this. So, my daughter is in nursing school right now. She's graduating in May.
But she chose a great profession. But
eventually she's probably going to go to anesthesia school. That's kind of her path at this point. But, there's been some things that I've noticed. I hear about the shortage and so forth, and maybe we can take some of these topics individually. But first and foremost, the school that she's going to only accepts a certain amount of students per year, and it is overwhelmingly tough to get into this program. Okay. And I mean tough beyond what I would have ever thought it should have been, first and foremost. Secondarily, my daughter is a student and she's, studies a lot. But when she says to me, Dad, all my friends who are business majors and fashion majors and this, that, or the other, they're all going out Friday and Saturday nights, and I'm having to study, and, I'm putting all this time in, and they're not having to. So part of me, obviously, thinking through this is thinking, are we really tough on the education piece? Maybe tougher than we should be. And the other part of that is, if we are, we're pushing away students who could probably do the job, but because it's so tough, they're not doing that as a career choice. And then another piece to this is, and you mentioned it a minute ago, the work environment is not a great environment. I know where Lauren's taking a job. She's going to be working 6 months night shift, 6 months day shift. And to be honest with you, this millennial group and these folks coming out, this is not the type of environment that they want to see themselves in. This isn't the same generation it was 10, 20 years ago. So all these things manifesting itself on top of, you mentioned that the baby boomers retiring and moving out of the workforce. Then we had COVID, but it all starts with bringing new people in, 125 to 250,000. Is there something that we need to be doing on the front end of this to address this as well?
Yes and no. Here's the reason I say both of those. Yes, we still need to be able to bring in more qualified students
Right.
or nursing students. And we need to start early. A lot of people think, 7th, 8th, ninth grade or whatever. No, we need to start actually with people in the second and third grade. And the reason that I say that is that they need to get implanted right there. They need to be exposed to nurses, particularly nurses from all genders, both male and female, and all ethnicity. Because if I see someone that looks like me, that's someone that I can aspire to. But they also need to be told, how tough it's going to be, that we do take those STEM courses that a pharmacist is going to take, or a physician is going to take, or an engineer is going to take, or whatever, so that, they can see that nursing is a true profession and that nursing is highly competitive. Now, to your daughter's sake about having to study and et cetera, I could, the same thing happened to me, like 40 years ago.
Yeah.
When I was in nursing school. It was very, very tough because you're dealing with people's lives. So you do want somebody who is going to be very well versed, that can do the critical thinking and et cetera, that it's going to take in order to help get that person over the crisis that they are in. And of course, nowadays, we're not only having to apply those critical thinking skills, but we're also having to embrace innovation that, supposedly designed to make our job easier. But in some instances, it's making it a little tougher, because the electronic medical record, if we're not checking those boxes that says we did or did not do something, then you're going to be reprimanded in some way or another, even though you can try to explain to, that patient needed me to be there to hold their hands. Maybe they were told some really devastating news, and the nurse in me recognized that I needed to be more empathetic or spend more time with this person, but yet you're going to ding me because I didn't check that box at the before I ended my shift. And somehow the electronic medical records doesn't quite allow for that, and it really should be able to do that. As far as with being able to admit more students, first of all, we got to get more faculty, more clinically and theory trained, qualified faculty to be able to do that. And of course, more clinical space, because obviously if you increase the enrollment, you gotta, they all have to have, I think about 240 hours of clinical time as well during the course of their studies. And of course, so where are we going to, have those? It's sort of almost like a dog chasing his tail, if you will.
Yeah.
But I truly think that as we're getting our legislators to put more money towards more faculty, more buildings, more simulation labs and et cetera that will that when that person does graduate, we have a much more well qualified, competent nurse. Then that's going to be the answer. But it's going to take time to build those buildings, to build those simulation labs, to get someone who wants to be a nursing instructor to have the skills and the qualifications that will meet that heavy demand as well. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but again, and one of the other things you sort of implied that your daughter is maybe one of the millennials who is not used to working a very tough job, if you will. But nursing is very tough. Mm-hmm. And I know when I was an administrator and I would interview someone, especially a new grad, and they would come in with, well, I only want to work Monday through Fridays, or, I don't want to do nights and et cetera. And it's like, sorry, you got to, either rethink why you went into nursing, because that's, people need the care 24/7, and it's going to take all of us working together. Can you imagine giving a new grad, only day shifts, whereas someone who has been on the unit for quite some time, still having to rotate to nights? No,
right.
You do.
That's
right.
why I don't take call anymore either, right? After giving anesthesia for 31 years.
Well, I mean, I'm hearing a couple of things, Ernest. One is you hit the nail on the head. This was a problem 20 years ago that's not going to be solved overnight. And that's very obvious here. So we are more in a crisis than a shortage. That's completely evident at this point. Mm-hmm. And then, as far as the environment goes, I mean, how do you get more people interested? And you said something about, maybe starting, in their second grade or third grade.
I was in the second grade when I decided to be a nurse.
Yeah. So, I mean, if they know the work environment is going to be tough, if they know the job itself is going to be tough, and obviously the education is going to be tough to get there, and, salaries have come up, but obviously they're not making what physicians are making and so forth. How do you convince that person that this might be the job for them, given all these difficult circumstances? Because right now, with the shortage, you need numbers, but you want quality and patient care. But where's that line at?
That's a really great question. And I think the line is that they should get some inkling of that while they are students and doing clinical, and even as a student, keep in mind, you're only taking care of usually one or two patients, at that particular time. So if you don't have the opportunity to keep up at that particular point, then, it's definitely something that you need to sort of think about. Either where and what area do I want to practice that, maybe the patient population is not or nurse-patient ratio will not be as high. I'm thinking like maybe psych or outpatient surgery or, the recovery room or, something like that. There are some areas where, you can go and the patient, nurse-patient ratio is not going to be as high as what we're hearing about on, say, a med-surg floor or a medicine floor, and et cetera. But it has to be instilled into them that, this is what nursing is that you do have to bite the bullet and realize that there's a lot that's going to be asked of you. And sometimes you do maybe have to ask yourself, am I cut out to be a nurse, or am I cut out to be a nurse in this particular setting? Because we're talking about the acute care setting, but keep in mind, nursing has so many different opportunities. You could be a school nurse, you could be a public health nurse, you could do, private duty, or or whatever. Because concierge nursing is up and coming as well. So there's a lot of different opportunities to consider. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the acute care setting where we mostly think of where nursing is located.
As a CRNA, you spend years preparing yourself for this career, so we don't want to see you lose out on any of the income you've worked so hard to earn. The best way to protect yourself and give you the confidence that a major life event won't disrupt your financial future is through disability insurance. We've known disability income specialist Robert Smith for many years and have seen the work he's done with nearly 2,000 CRNAs over multiple decades. He can help identify any gaps in your existing coverage and fill those gaps by finding the best value on a policy. Contact Robert and let him know you heard about him on our podcast. Send him an email at rsmithjr@financialguide.com. That's rsmithjr@financialguide.com. Or call him at 504-394-6557. Protect your greatest asset as a CRNA, yourself and your ability to earn a living by adding disability insurance to your financial plan.
So what is it, you talked a little bit about work environment. What is it that overall you think nurses want in their work environment?
Boy, you guys are really asking the really tough but right questions at the moment. So, for the last 2 years, the American Nurses Association, the Association of Critical Care Nurses, AONL, HICFA, IHI, there's a group that has been, we started a workforce task force. And one of the first things that they did was to listen to nurses, what it is that nurses want. And, as far as, and trying to ascertain why nurses are leaving the bedside. And it boils down to about 6 things that nurses are, have determined that this is what we want. The first thing, and of course, a lot of people think that, it's probably compensation. It is compensation, but compensation is actually number 6.
Oh, wow.
The first thing is that they want a safe and healthy work environment. And what do we mean by that? Well, that means that there's enough staff to ensure that, that the workload is evenly distributed, and that I can spend that time with the patient, check all those boxes on the electronic medical record, and leave work on time. Because we know working 12 hours quickly can turn into 13 or 14 hours or so, and then to have to turn back around and come back into work. You think, oh well, I should leave by 7, so that gives me roughly about 10 hours or so to get home and get some rest. But now that I'm leaving work at 9 o'clock, well, now I'm only going to get about 4 or 5 hours worth of sleep. And if you keep repeating this, there's going to be acts of omission and commission, which is going to be detrimental to the nurse and the patient that they're caring for. It could also mean that safe environment, that I'm not assaulted by a patient or a patient family member or even my colleagues. And if I am, that I am supported by that policy that supposedly exists that says that we have a zero tolerance policy. But when nurses go to report such incidents, in a lot of cases, they are encouraged to not do so by either HR or whatever, because, a lot of facilities are thinking about those Press-Ganey scores, and the message you're sending to the nurse is that, we value those Press-Ganey scores more so than we do, what may have happened to you. So that's one thing.
That has gotten better, don't you think, though?
Well,
Ernest,
in a way, but when you
years.
stop and think that, what was it, just in October, even in our state of North Carolina, where you had a nurse who was murdered by a patient, or in Texas, where we had, 2 nurses who were killed by, and granted, mental health, applies in those cases, but it's still something to think about. Or even in Seattle, where you had a home health nurse who was shot.
Yeah. I'm talking more in the workforce itself.
In the workplace setting, yeah.
Because
absolutely.
I've had bags of blood thrown at me by surgeons, instruments. Only once every time, but those kind of things don't I don't think they happen the way they used to 20, 30 years ago.
But we need to be cognizant of they can potentially happen because of, again, just a colleague who's overstressed in work, and, unfortunately something may happen, and that could be the straw that breaks the camel's back that we wouldn't necessarily think about. The second thing is, of course, diversity, equity, and inclusion, looking at opportunities for advancement in leadership and et cetera. A couple of others that, has been stressed is a flexible work schedule. That a lot of facilities now are looking at the idea of, is 12 hours really where we want to be now? Maybe we need to go back to working those 8-hour shifts. 8-hour shifts were working really great. And what brought about the change to 12 hours was that, it was enticing to say, well, you only have to work 3 days 1 week, 4 days the next, and you got that extra full day off. or you could fix it to where you'd have like 4 days in a row off, and that may work for some of the younger nurses, but maybe for some of the older nurses that are there, or nurses who've been retired, inviting them to be able to come back and do, either 4 hours or 8 hours, or two retired nurses split an 8-hour shift, and for the unit to figure out, okay, when's the most crucial time that we're really, really busy that we could use that extra pair of hands. It may not be that older nurse comes in at 7 or 8 o'clock. Maybe we need them around 10 o'clock if they can work from 10 to 2 or something to help get the unit over that crucial hump, is something that a lot of people are exploring, along those lines as well. And of course, as I said, the last one of those was compensation. Nurses need to be paid for what we are worth. And also along with that, it's not just the hourly rate, but other benefits that that we should be entitled to as well. Looking at days off, or paid time off, or holiday premium pays, things of that sort, or what may feel valued to me as a baby boomer. Obviously, I'm at the point where I have a defined benefit plan, and I know that when I retired, I was going to get a certain, guaranteed payment. Well, for a younger nurse, they perhaps aren't interested in that defined benefit plan. They want that portable 401k that they can take with them as well. So, those are some of the things that we need to take into consideration that would, help to retain nurses and keep them at the bedside. And also, as I said, offer for that retired nurse to be able to come back and work, if it is just 4 hours or 8 hours, it helps everyone all the way around.
Ernest, you've kind of mentioned, what employers could possibly do to alleviate some of this, but what could or should the government be doing to kind of help alleviate some of this shortage problem? You being in Washington, the opportune time, right?
Yes. Well, when I wrote that letter to Secretary Becerra that I had mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, it was an 8-page letter. And I know that you don't write and complain without providing some solutions.
Right. And
4 of those 8 pages were solutions that the federal government and state and local governments could do. In that, I said, we need to invite everybody who is involved to the table. That's nurses, that's hospital administrators, that's the payers, that's the Department of Labor, that's HHS folks, everybody that has a stake in why this shortage is occurring, or what we can do to help alleviate the shortage. And let's look at what we can achieve for short-term and long-term goals. Because it's not going to be solved overnight. But there are some things that we can be doing. And part of it is, yes, the federal government perhaps putting more funding towards that, like towards nursing education, and for being able to elevate maybe that LPN or that nursing assistant who want to be able to become RNs, but they can't because they feel trapped in the work that they can do. Right. So offer them some scholarships, or something that would make it easier for them to be able to do that. But other things that the federal government can do, of course, is help us to look at or explore, what may be new models of care that could be compensated for by the services that nurses bring. I've been a strong advocate. I think when I was on the show the last time, I mentioned about the advocating for nurses to be able to charge for the services that they provide. No other member of the healthcare team is included in room and board, but we call ourselves a profession, but we're treated as a commodity. But if our physician colleagues can charge what they do, if our pharmacist colleagues can charge for the services that they provide, respiratory therapists, physical therapists, occupational therapists, all these different professions, if you will, can charge independently for the services that they bring, why is nursing still stuck on, included in the room and board? It's
like the hotel industry.
Right, right. It
Yeah.
just doesn't make sense at all.
Mm-mm.
So we have got to find our voice and be at the table. One of my favorite saying, and Sharon, I'm sure you're probably familiar with this, is that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And we have certainly been on the menu a little too long. I think now they have cut us down to the bone now, as they've been chewing on us. And we need to be able to say, this will not stand any longer. We need to find our voice and be able to advocate for, who we are as a profession, and stop advocating or perpetuating the status quo. Again, as I said, if we don't have a voice in how our profession is practiced, it is going to be someone with an MBA who's just looking at numbers and who thinks that a nurse is a nurse is a nurse, and they are going to be the ones who are making the decision about how we as a profession practice. And as you know, as we say down south, that ain't right.
Yeah, but it is already happening.
Today's show is brought to you by the folks at CRNA Financial Planning, an independent consulting firm that offers financial planning services exclusively to CRNAs and their families. From planning for a child's future college expenses to building a predictable income stream in retirement, the firm is committed to offering you comprehensive financial services, customized to fit your unique needs and objectives. If you have questions about your financial future, get them answered. Call the team at 855-304-3748. That's 855-304-3748. Or go online to crnafinancialplanning.com.
Now, in light of the strike in New York, and they were basically, one of the reasons why they were striking were ratios, do you think that's a solution?
I can think of some situations where that works perfectly. And of course, California has had ratios for quite some time, and it seems to work well there. But in some cases where you may have critical access or situations, or even certain units that may have specific situations, that may not be applicable, or at least maybe or I should say a designated ratio. I think like in California it's 4-to-1. Some other states, it's like 5-to-1 or 6-to-1 or so. It would depend upon the expertise of the nurse that may be involved. It may depend on the particular unit that may be there. Obviously, in critical care, or like in my background, with burns and critical care, you yourself know that all it takes is one phone call and you're getting 6 admissions in, that could be critically injured. We got to be able to flex up and flex down, in certain situations. So I would say that ratios may be one aspect to consider, but there certainly are some other things to take into consideration as well. So this is where having like a staffing governance that has some teeth. It's one thing to have a staffing governance committee, but if they don't have any teeth to enforce that, or if you have, there are some states that have passed, staffing laws, but again, if they don't have teeth to enforce those, then that's going to be, again, it's not really getting us anywhere. It just looks good on paper, but it doesn't necessarily rectify the actual situation of what is going on. So I think, yes, ratios may be a part or one potential answer to the problem, but it is not the definitive answer.
Well, some hospitals are recruiting, nurses who were educated or trained in foreign countries and so forth. I mean, do you think this could be a partial solution to the problem, or what's your opinion on this?
Well, I have mixed feelings about that, because the first thing I'm thinking of is that you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. There's a nursing shortage globally.
Right.
And I don't think that it's fair to pull nurses from a country that is maybe hurting just as bad as the United States is, just to benefit folks here. That being said, though, in situations where we know that there are a few countries, such as the Philippines, a few African countries or whatever that do send a fair amount of their nurse graduates here to the United States to work. And of course, it benefits them because they can send money home, back home, and help out their families back home, and that's all well and good. The thing about bringing in foreign nurse graduates, and I'm not against it, if they're able to. Of course, there's certain situations in which obviously their nursing education has to be evaluated against ours, and being able to pass the NCLEX and et cetera, and fit right in. But part of it will depend upon how long it may take for them to get acclimated, if you will, to what how nursing is done here in the United States as compared to their country of origin. So that is definitely something to think about. And then I've had some nurses say to me that the monies that a lot of facilities are using to bring that nurse over here, or those nurses over here, and by those I mean multiples of nurses, not right. In a sling format. That is money that could be used to help compensate them at the bedside. Because one of the things that they're thinking about is, I've proven my loyalty to this organization. So what are they doing to show their appreciation to me? Yes, you're providing another warm body, that is here, but it is going to take that person some time before they're able to essentially fly on their own, if you will. But it still means that I'm having to do more, because I'm just like if it's a travel nurse, I'm having to ensure that our policies and procedures are adhered to, and plus do my work on top of that as well. So they are, maybe by asking that, they be recognized or compensated in some way or another, some form or another, may be, something that needs to be considered as well.
Hey, Sharon, we've got some exciting news to share with people today, don't we?
Yes, we do. And why don't you let the cat out of the bag, Jeremy?
Wow, I don't usually put cats in bags. Is that kind of a deep-seated thing with you, or what? Well, some of our listeners know we've been doing live podcasts around the country at different state association meetings, ANA events, and so forth. And May 4th through the 7th, we're actually going to be at the Pennsylvania State Meeting. Sharon, you've been there a lot and spoken a lot there, at the Hotel Hershey.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've never been to the Hotel Hershey, so I'm kind of
Oh my gosh, you are in
that.
for a treat. When you check in, they ask you milk or dark, because you get chocolate when you check in.
Wow.
It's really cool. So listeners, if you want to go to a great meeting, Pennsylvania puts on a great meeting. We'll be doing the live podcast taping there, and they're going to be having a party there too. And guess who the DJ is?
Let me think. Does his last name end with Pierce?
Yes, it does.
DJ
So
Pierce
come
will
and
be
join
in the
us. Can't leave the house without him anymore,
That's right.
So join us in Pennsylvania at the Hotel Hershey, May 4th through the 7th, and come to a great meeting.
So we've talked a little bit about the problem and some of the solutions, but where do you think this is really going to go? And what do you see in the future with this shortage?
Well, obviously, the shortage is going to persist for a while. It's estimated that even by 2025, I think we're going to need another 1 million or 1.5 million nurses on top of the shortage that we have now. So where are we going to get those nurses from? I think that as far as we've got to put a system in place where nurses feel valued, where nurses who have chosen. Some people would say there's not really a nursing shortage. There is a shortage of nurses who are choosing not to work for their employer or not to work in the acute care setting. So maybe we need to, again, by addressing potentially new models of care, by addressing compensation packages and et cetera, what will it take to bring nurses back, who are choosing to stay at home or who are choosing to work in the gig economy. There's a lot out now about not only concierge nursing, but where hospitals will post, that we have a need for a nurse. We're going to, we need you for 8 hours or so. We're going to pay this amount, and et cetera. And nurses either bid on that particular job, or they will quickly take that, allowing for more flexibility of their schedules. Maybe that's, putting those things in place, or maybe some of the ways to help alleviate the shortage by making it more, the schedules more flexible for nurses who want to be parents, go to their child's baseball games, or to, the ballet, recital that their kids may be having, and et cetera. And just a chance to have a life outside of the acute care setting. So maybe, that is one of the things that employers may need to look at, is how can we meet our needs, but still meet the needs of our nurses as well.
Yeah. What I'm hearing you say is there's still a whole lot of work to do.
Oh, yes.
Well,
yes, there's still a whole lot to be
what
done.
I appreciated about what happened in New York is nursing was taking control of its own destiny, instead of us sitting here and saying, the federal government needs to help us. We need to take control of our own destiny. And we need to stand up and say, this is what we want, but it's hard to get your arms around it. I get that.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked about millennials a lot. I love millennials.
Yep. They just think differently.
So do I.
They do,
Yeah,
but they will
do.
never put up with the
They won't.
that we put up with. And so I have a great outlook, because they will not do it, and they will find a solution.
Yes,
to get it done.
But I agree with you wholeheartedly, Sharon. The thing that I think, though, that they need to come together. Typically, we're dealing with a group that are focused on apps and things that they can find here. They don't tend to be joiners of organizations, or if they are, it's only for this one reason. And once that reason is solved or addressed, then I'm out of here. What's next? They need to understand, just like what was taught to all of us when we were in nursing school, that if you're going to consider yourself a professional nurse, you join your professional organization. And it's one thing, as I would tell my students, it's one thing to be a member. It's another thing to be an active member. And that's what it's going to take, is, people being active, because there's strength in numbers. And, once those legislators or other individuals who are destined to try to control who we are as nurses in our profession, once they begin to see that, that we are roaring big time, that's what's going to help us to promote change as well, and embrace, innovation and technology as well. That would, those things that will, again, help to make us work more efficiently, more effectively, and and be able to have that flexible schedule and time off that we so crave so much.
Yeah.
Well, to your point, I'll give you an example. I just was talking to a CRNA, and she was telling about this new lung protective ventilation thing that she was using at the hospital that she worked at. And I work at a hospital a couple days a week, and I could not wait to get to work, because I work with a lot of these kids who just come out of anesthesia school, and I wanted to hear what they had to say about that. I couldn't wait. So I go into the lounge. There's about 6 CRNAs sitting in there, and I'm standing there, and I looked around, and they were all on their phones. And I said, how do y'all learn from each other? I mean, the anesthesia lounge used to be the place where you come in and you told about this bad airway you just had, and somebody goes, I had that happen, and this is what I did, and you learn from each other. I said, how do you guys learn from each other and your experiences? All 6 of you are sitting in here, and it sounds like a tomb. And so I do have my concerns, and I hear you, but they just won't tolerate the things that that we
No.
tolerated.
Right.
So if we
Right.
can marry the good parts about us baby boomers with the good parts of the millennials,
Yeah.
now there's the answer.
There you go. There's the answer.
That's the answer. I was going to say
You figured it out right there.
Right.
Ernest, I heard you say something earlier, and I'm going to go back to that for just a minute because I've thought about it ever since you said it. You said, nurses are included in room and board,
We are.
and that just struck a chord with me because it just made me think that historically, who does nursing?
Mm-hmm.
Women.
Right.
So, and it also made me think of a law in the state of North Carolina has on the books called alienation of affection. And I don't know whether you're familiar with it, but it's a crazy law that was written years and years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And it was when they viewed women as property. And
Right.
it's still on the books, by the way, in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
But listening to you say that, it kept going through my head that the people that are still in charge still view the nurses as property. And they're part of it. And that, my friend,
That's
is
true.
what's got to change.
That is true.
That's what's got to change.
Nurse anesthesia is 47% male. And I thank my lucky stars every day because if not, we wouldn't make the kind of money we do.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Because we would be feminized and we wouldn't make any money.
Yeah, you're right.
But when the men come in, they change that.
They change that. And let me give you another example because I spoke on, I did a topic, it was 2 weeks ago now for the Society for Critical Care Medicine. And it was a plenary session on how nursing during the pandemic may have exacerbated the nursing workforce shortage. And what I did was to go back and look at the historical perspective of the various nursing shortages that have happened, like, starting in the 30s, well, actually the 20s and the 30s and et cetera. Part of it was, if you go back that far, women working outside the home, there were only 3 jobs that were acceptable. You were either a teacher, you were going to be a secretary, and of course secretaries didn't start till around the 40s, 50s or so, because then before that men were secretaries. And men were also teachers, or you could be a nurse, and that was pretty much it. But then, because you were still, a female-dominated profession, and you're right in that, yes, you may have begun to get some autonomy, but again, you were still treated as a servant, if you will,
basically, yeah,
and that you're gonna
do what I
say,
say,
or you're going to get paid what I said you're going to get paid, and and that's it. So you had very little flexibility to be able to flex your muscles. And again, if you go back and look at the historical perspective, Sharon, just like what you said about men being in anesthesia, as men began to go into nursing, we began to see salaries increase because, just historically, in a lot of jobs, not only nursing, but in a lot of jobs, they where men and women may be competing, the man is going to make more because, he is considered the quote unquote breadwinner of the family, and therefore he deserves to make more money. And I'm not saying that's right, because it's not right. I mean, you should be equal pay for, equal employment, but that's the way historically, jobs have gone. And so that goes back to your comment about what can the government do.
Yeah.
That's one of the things, is just ensure that nurses are paid equally for the same amount of work that they're doing.
Well, ERA still hasn't passed, but that's a whole other conversation. So what are you going to do in your retirement?
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like.
Yeah. Well, right now I'm failing at retirement. I promised myself that I would take, the first 3 months off. And so I messed up in January.
You've already lied to yourself, haven't you?
Looks like I'm well on the way. The same thing in February. So we'll see what happens in March. But I do plan to, I do want to write a book about my experience as getting us over the pandemic, and also the work of the commission and ANA's reconciliation statement that we're working on and continuing to work on. I'm being approached about considering the possibility of entering the political realm.
Yes.
My problem there, though, is that the people, if I chose to either run for the House, the state House, or the state Senate, the two, I'd be running against friends.
Yeah.
That's true.
A lot of that's about timing. You and I both know that, Ernest.
Yes. So we'll, that's certainly a possibility there. And of course, I do need to find another job. I'd like to do something, in the policy arena. So, who knows? Maybe getting, serving as a legislative assistant or something, with either someone at the national level or even just like a think tank. That would be something as well. But right now, though, I'm still just trying to wake up every morning and say, no, you don't have to be in a meeting. No, you don't have to prep for an interview. And
as you talk about what I'm going to do next.
Yes.
I think there's another saying about that. I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth.
Yes.
Well, I'm seeing the pattern here. We're all probably very similar in personality, and the fact that we've all got to be doing something,
absolutely,
or we shrivel up and die.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
like a fish.
Absolutely.
When you quit swimming, you sink to the bottom.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Ernest, we want to thank you for being on the show, and we're going to wrap it up here. Anything you want to conclude on before we move on?
No, just again, thanks to your listeners. Thanks for their help. During the pandemic, and thanks for their continued support. And I hope to be invited back for future conversations. I really enjoy talking with the both of you, and hope that. I will get an invitation to come back. So.
Oh, you'll keep getting them.
Say,
Don't block my cell phone number.
All right. And good luck in retirement. Excuse me.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
All right. Well, Sharon, I think it's a wrap.
I think so.
We want to thank our listeners for listening to Beyond the Mask with Jeremy Stanley and
Sharon Pierce.
Sharon, if they like our show and want to help us grow, how can they help us out?
Well, the best way to help us grow is to leave us a review, but make it
positive. We all know there's enough negativity in this world.
Share us on social media. Tell all your friends. We're in the top 50 medical podcasts in the country, on the way to number
1, of course. That's
all
right. Until next time.
It's a wrap.
Have you thought about what would happen if you weren't able to work for 2 or 3 years? On average, 25% of people will file a disability claim, and most of us aren't prepared for that loss of income. Every CRNA needs to protect their biggest asset, yourself, and your ability to earn with a disability insurance policy. We recommend contacting Robert Smith, a master disability insurance specialist with more than 30 years of experience and 1,800 CRNA clients, to find the coverage that fits you best. The best way to do that is to send him an email at rsmithjr@financialguide.com. That's rsmithjr@financialguide.com. Or call him at 504-394-6557. Beyond the Mask is made possible by the team at CRNA Financial Planning. With almost 2 decades of experience, the firm guides CRNAs through the complexities of investing and financial planning. Schedule a free consultation today by calling 855-304-3748 or go online to crnafinancialplanning.com.
Hi, this is Jackie Rolls, President of the International Federation of Nurse Anesthetists and President and founder of Our Hearts, Your Hands, a global anesthesia support community that takes donations to allow nurse anesthetists in low and middle income countries to go to educational programs, buy equipment, or textbooks. Your donations are tax deductible, and we would appreciate your support.
Be sure to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and anywhere you like to listen to shows. Also, be sure to check out BeyondTheMaskPodcast.com. Each episode is posted there with a corresponding blog post, and we timestamp important parts of the episode to help you quickly get to the content you're looking for. Also, check out the special series section on the site. You can follow along and catch up on the CRNA History Series, episodes specifically about political conversations in the industry. Or try the CRNA Personal Finance Series. It's all on BeyondTheMaskPodcast.com. And if you have a question for the show or want to be a guest or even suggest a particular topic, Fill out the contact form on the site or send an email directly to us at info@beyondthemaskpodcast.com. And lastly, let's take the conversation social. Check out our Beyond the Mask podcast Facebook page and Facebook group.